live in the studio here in WLCN 96.3, Bill Colvin's Viewpoint. The lady to my right is Judith K. Busby. And this morning we have a couple of gentlemen from the Salvation Army. You know, he mentioned the Corps a while ago. I was just sitting here thinking, we had one well-known individual in this country who called it corpse. Well, in any event, let's get specific now about some of the programs that you have in mind, not only in Lincoln but in your district, Richard. You brought some specific information, and we've been discussing general the Salvation Army, and hopefully it's going to mean a lot more, Tony, to our community than it has through nobody's particular fault, just kind of the way things evolved. We've got a wonderful center there on Kickapoo Street, the Keith Center. So, Rich, we'll pass the baton to you just a minute, and if you'll discuss the programs that you have in mind.
Sure. Well, I think, you know, Lincoln is a great model, as we mentioned, all the way back to 1889, and actually Peoria was one of the first locations in the state of Illinois, and that was only 3 years before that. So Lincoln's been around as a Salvation Army place of service for almost as long as Peoria has. Now in Peoria, one of our things that we hang our hat on is our child care center. We have the longest continuously running child care center in the city of Peoria. And I talked earlier about trying to be responsive to the community's needs. We had a kindergarten program there. Well, with all the construction on the Interstate 74 and everything through downtown, we were seeing declining numbers. And so we took a look at it and said, this doesn't make any sense to offer a kindergarten class for 4 kids. So we discontinued it. During the reconstruction of the highway, we then expanded our child care, and we had a survey done by a local college group, and they said, you know what is underserved is infant care. So we added infant care, and now we've had a double the size of that class already. So we found out that infant care was underserved. We began to do that, and we hired some additional staff, and that program is thriving. So that is one of our main things. The second thing, and you mentioned Memorial Day earlier, last November 10th, the day before Veterans Day, we opened a Veterans Outreach Center. We do an overnight emergency homeless shelter for men, and this is true not only in this part of the country but around the United States. 25% of all homeless people are veterans. And the gentleman that worked in that program at night was a veteran himself, a Marine Corps veteran, and he and his son just had a feeling that they had to do something to help these guys. So they've been bugging us for 4 or 5 years. You got to do something for the veterans. Got to do something for the veterans. We had an empty building right next door to us that actually, full circle, was my insurance man's office when I worked in radio 20 years ago. And I never knew the Salvation Army was right behind there. We rehabbed that building, and talk about a wonderful experience. All the work, with the exception of the security system and the heating and air conditioning, was done by retired veterans. We had an 89-year-old gentleman laid the floor tile 2 weeks before we opened. They did the ceiling work. They rehabbed the entire inside of the building with Habitat for Humanity. We opened up last November 10th. Again, just a counseling place, a place for veterans to meet, but we have 2 people on staff that can help them find records, find out what they qualify for assistance. One of the latest pushes is widows who don't realize that they can qualify for their spouse's benefits. And so we opened last November 10th. In January, just this past January, we had over 93 either veterans or veteran spouses come in to get assistance in that building. So it's born out of a passion that a volunteer originally had, that the Army's been able to add this programming. Again, we're not trying to replace the VA, we're not trying to replace the outreach centers, but we're putting people in touch with the right people that need to get them help. And there's no greater feeling than to have somebody come in, and I'm sure Tony would tell you the same thing, not knowing where that next thing is coming from. Where's my next meal? How am I going to make it through this week? And those veterans and their spouses that come in and leave with, we had I'll call her a young lady, we had a young lady, a seasoned citizen, whose husband had passed away. She didn't realize that she qualified for his benefits. She had just moved into an assisted living center and was really down to her last probably a couple months of savings. And they found that they could get her she qualified for $1,200 a month from her
Big thing to
husband's
her.
from her
Huge
husband's
for her.
benefits, and now she's a little more peace of mind that,
Yes.
okay, I don't have to worry about where my next dollar's coming from, or are they going to kick me out of the center because I
Yeah.
can't pay my bills. So just little things like that that really make me feel good
Oh, yeah.
about working for the Salvation Army.
Well, it's that age-old expression, you know, the difference that makes the difference.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what's going on in the work that you're doing there. And each and every organization that steps up, and by the way, I'm really deeply involved, not involved, I'm going to restate that, interested in this Wounded Warrior Project. I think it's a huge project in this country, and unfortunately, or fortunately in our case, we're not as exposed to it because of the size of our community.
Mhm.
But it's a huge problem. And so Wounded Warriors is a project that's near and dear to my heart, and I'd like to see more done here in this community, even though we don't have, we might be surprised, however, to find out how many we actually have that are affected. So you're doing a great service to the community.
Yeah, we're certainly trying to, and you know, and again, it really does reflect well on the communities that we serve in, because if we didn't have passionate people in those communities, as much work as Tony would want to do in Lincoln would be just that much harder if he was doing it by himself. So you do have neighbors and friends and business people and churches that just really take up the cause together, because none of us can do it alone. You know, churches that do feeding programs and pantries and whatnot. In Peoria, there's 4 or 5 right in the downtown area. So we might feed them lunch during the week, and then they go to those churches for their dinner program. So we can't operate in silos anymore. We have to really look at it in a community approach and realize we can do 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to pass them on to the next group to do 4, 5, and 6, but not just separate ourselves from those other agencies, but work together with them and figure out how we can, as a community, work to help these people out, because they are our neighbors. You know, we have people in Peoria that maybe 5 years ago were the ones donating to us. Now they're the ones that need a food basket now and again.
See, I know. Well, our economy has tanked, you know, let's be honest, and I'm sure that there's even a greater need now for people to get some kind of help somewhere, find out what in the world is going on to save themselves. People who've had good jobs and good educations are out on the street.
Sure.
It's just awful.
One thing that happened just recently with our neighbors next door, you said the brick building with the academic development, they host once a month a meeting with Together for Lincoln, who does a big project
Oh gosh,
throughout
yes.
the community in the fall.
that's
so we've been attending those meetings, of course, right next door there. But because of our partnership, helping Ameren Silco with energy assistance, wonderful lady Susan Sams that oversees that and has talked with me, kind of helped me with the combined programs here, helping people locally. Found out that I'm working with Together for Lincoln. She said, "What's that about?" And I told her. She said, "Well, we can donate up to X amount, and it's going to be probably thousands of dollars that Ameren Silco will help us with for weatherization coming up this fall." It's in process with Norm Newhouse, the
Yes,
board
bless
president,
his
Together
heart.
for Lincoln, wonderful gentleman. And
Yes, he
so every week we're communicating, and the latest is once we get a list of people that need certain amount of weatherization, we may have, you know, $8,000. I mean, up to that much. So, you know, partnering together really helps. And there are businesses like Ameren, there are other agencies that if together, you know, with our hearts and minds, heads screwed on straight, work together, we can help our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors, our friends, and those who are most needy. We don't want to be enablers, but we want to assist. That's another point. We must do that, and you know, we've seen, Salvation Army's seen all sides, but we want to address the real needs and help where we can help the best and the most. So that's some of what we're about locally and in the area, and we are the boots on the ground. Salvation Army, the Army part, but the Salvation part, we don't leave the Salvation part out at all. We counsel, we hold people, direct people to churches to get spiritual support and strength from a community of believers, all these things. You know, so it's very important. And
yeah, we're more than the theme of the old Broadway play Guys and Dolls, and we're a lot more than that theme, you know. Safe to say then, Tony and Richard, that we're being reinnervated there on South Kickapoo Street. We've born again, so to speak, if I may use that, because we've kind of lay fallow for a while now, and we've apparently there's some fertilizer, some rain, and we're starting to sprout again.
Now, with that, you've heard interlaced with all of this the need for. I'm the only hired employee there, so it can't be done without a lot of volunteers.
Yeah, sure.
The community showed up in a great way right at that Red Kettle crisis time when I walked in, and I obviously couldn't do it, but the community showed up, and in 2.5 to 3 weeks, with the combined mail-in response, generated over $23,000 locally for the operation. That's wonderful, but that's about a third of what we need, even with the bare bones of ordinance. So we're looking for more other families, and people are coming to help temporarily staff as we house people there, because I can't be awake 24/7, and you know. So we're looking for people to volunteer, and they can get a hold of us there. Our phone number is 732-7890 at the Key Center. We're involved in training people ongoing right now. A few that want to come and help volunteer. They get screened. We do background checks. We do safe from harm training. We do things so that's the best all the way around. Whatever you do, if you don't have, you know, if you go out to war, you got to make sure you got enough to win that thing. If you're going to build something, you have to make sure you got enough to finish the job. Part of building the Key Center was the structure, but the Key Center is more than the structure should be. The operational thing is going to have to be rest on the shoulders of all of us as the community of Lincoln and Logan County, with that volunteer force, part of, indirectly, the Salvation Army, because one person or five can't do all of that. But as we partner, as we team together, that's
well, we appreciate very much your appearance with us this morning, gentlemen. Rich, you've come from Peoria, and we appreciate that very much.
My pleasure.
It gives you a chance to get acquainted with Tony and kind of vet him a little bit, perhaps.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Well, you know, gentlemen, Rich in particular, since you don't live here, there's a lot of strength in this area with volunteerism. These folks in this area simply know how to grab the bat and step up to the plate. And in their respective churches and their respective organizations, or community-wide, such as Together for Lincoln, this is a giving and a caring community. And so we welcome you here. I don't have a quote that pertains to the Salvation Army, Judith K., because very candidly, since you own 51% of the show, I need to confess to you here in front of God and everybody, I forgot it was the Salvation Army that we had this morning. So I apologize for that. So I don't, but I do have a quote that's apropos. We just finished Memorial Day, and we're coming up here very quickly here with June 6th D-Day, followed by Flag Day, June 14th. The great philosopher Harry Emerson Fosdick said, "The tragedy of war is that it uses man's best to do man's worst." Thank you for Viewpoint.